Hello and welcome to In Focus with Insight. My name is Pamela Hellig. I'm head of Insight Life Solutions, and this is a very special episode of the Open Books series in which we get to know fascinating and inspiring people in the actuarial, insurance, and now finance and journalism communities through the books that they have read and loved. As I said, today is a special episode because as we are recording, we are preparing for our very first Notes in the Margin event, which is going to be a series of intimate gatherings in which we bring together our clients, partners, and friends to enjoy good food, excellent wine and drinks, and also engage in some thought-provoking conversation. Now, what makes these Notes in the Margin events special is that each one will have some kind of literary connection. So our guest speakers will be authors, journalists, cultural commentators, anyone that has the ability to pull us out of the actuarial space for a few hours and into the realm of the intellectual. And today we are very lucky to have our guest speaker join us on the podcast for this special edition. And I'm sure everyone listening is as excited as I am to get to know the person behind the personality. I'm very, very happy to welcome Maya Fisher-French to the podcast. Maya is a multiple award-winning consumer financial journalist, founder of Maya on Money, and author of Money Questions Answered, making her the first published author we've had on the podcast. Maya was the personal finance editor at City Press for 15 years before recently moving to News 24, where she has her own weekly column. Maya presents the popular award-winning Money Matters show on ENCA and currently sits on the FSCA Consumer Advisory Panel. Having worked in the financial industry in private banking and stockbroking, combined with 22 years as a financial journalist, Maya has a deep understanding of the world of money. She has an honors degree in economics from the University of the Witwatersrand. Welcome to the podcast, Maya.
Thank you, Pam.
Now tell me, are you a reader?
Completely and utterly. It is just that is my happy space.
So glad to hear that, so that we have that in common, because this isn't like the normal podcast interview in that we will get to know you and talk about the things you're busy with, but with the added lens of the books that have shaped you in some way. So you can think of this as the desert island discs for bibliophiles. But before we get into the books and the reading and all that, tell me, what are you busy with these days? What's keeping you on your toes?
Well, my journalism, and I just love being a journalist, and I'm going to be speaking about that a little bit later at the event. But yeah, so right now, probably my big sort of interest at the moment is around retirement and seeing. I've been involved in looking at some retirement surveys and been doing some work around that, and it's been so interesting to see how high income earners find it harder almost to achieve retirement than because of their lifestyles. And I think I'm quite interested in that at the moment, and understanding the psychology behind that lifestyle creep, all of those things. I think that's kind of that's sort of probably my interest at the moment. But then I've got so much consumer stuff going on as well. I'm always fighting some major scam or something like a trading platforms or something. So it keeps me busy.
So, in addition to your column and your journalism and your podcast, do you also take on private work and clients, or how do you get involved in different cases?
Yeah, so obviously my journalism allows me to be a voice for the consumer. So that I think there's always been that little part of me that loves to solve puzzles and find out what's going on. So I do a lot of that through my journalism. But then I have my financial education platform, and that really just evolved on its own. I was in the journalism space, but a lot of people would say, "Can you come and speak to our staff? Can you do work with us?" So for example, I'm working with Santam with their staff. We're doing a money boot camp. A lot of people are struggling with debt, so I do a lot of that as well, and speaking events. So really a lot around financial education.
So interested to hear more about what you're looking into in terms of retirement and other things you're busy with. We'll get into that in a bit, probably through the books that you brought with as well. But before we talk about the books, I'm very curious about your reading habits. So I'm going to ask some sort of quick fire questions about how you read. So tell me, Kindle, physical book, audiobook, what's your go-to?
All of them. Well, actually, not so much audio. I have a Kindle and I have physical books, and I tend to have my non-fiction and books of reference. I like to have physical because I like to make notes, as you'll see, and underline and have bundle stickers. But a lot of my fiction I'll have on my Kindle, so I use both.
Do you DNF a book if you're not enjoying it?
Definitely. There's a book that I started to read on my Kindle, and I actually I got my sister-in-law was my reading partner.
Okay.
We love the same books, and she'd read this book, and I phoned her and I said, I cannot stay in these people's company another minute. Is it worth it? And she said, if you're not enjoying it, leave.
Oh, I need to know which book that was.
It's the Patrick Melrose series. I don't know if you've read.
No, I
Well,
haven't.
they're most dreadful characters. They are horrible people, and I just decided I didn't need to be in their company anymore.
Okay, so life is too short to
It's too short to be with those people.
So apart from your sister-in-law, who do you take your recommendations from?
My sister-in-law is a big. She does all the new book reviews and all of that.
Okay.
Keeps me in the loop because I don't always have time to do that. But I'll also always attend the Frontier Literary Festival every year.
Okay.
And that's where I pick up a lot of new authors. And of course, in COVID, I attended online the Hay Festival, which was just also
Oh,
the
that's in the
doors.
UK. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd love to go in person one day, but they streamed it, and that was also just another great opportunity.
Okay, and how, in general, would you describe your relationship with books and reading? What does it mean to you?
Oh, everything. For me, when I'm in a good book, and this obviously be fiction, I feel like I always have the sense I'm diving into a lake. I don't know what it is, though. I'm
Okay.
just surrounded and I'm in this water and I'm just swimming and it's luxurious. It's just absolutely wonderful. That's my relationship with books. But I enjoy nonfiction as well. And I love the education that books give you. Even fiction. I mean, if you're reading good fiction that has got good historical, research, or it talks well about relationships, I think you can learn through fiction as well. It doesn't just need to be nonfiction.
Yeah, agreed. As a fiction reader, I often fight that battle. Um, you've written a book, which is so impressive. And what was that process like?
Yeah, so this is actually my second book. Well, this is a rewrite of the first book I did. So I think I wrote Money Plan when in 2015, 2016. And I actually took 6 months off work to do it because I found being a journalist and writing and then trying to write a book as well, it was just too much writing. There's only so much writing a girl can do in a day.
Yeah.
So I took 6 months off and I wrote the book. But then in COVID, don't we all have a COVID book in us? I realized it really needed updating. I added in some more anecdotes, more experiences. I brought in a lot of the work I'd done around money makeover, which was a project I did with City Press. So that was updated in COVID. So that was my COVID book.
Okay, so the writing process, I guess, built on your work as a journalist. You sort of used to that exercise, or was it something different? Was it a new sort of skill you had to learn?
I think it's such a good question. I think for me, what I did is I was pulling on all the experiences and questions people had asked me, but then it was putting it together. How do you put it together as one piece that sort of holds together? And what I decided, is do not finish, right? There's a lot of people who start to read a book meaning to end it, and they kind of get halfway and they get bored. So I thought I wanted my book to be each chapter to stand alone. So
Okay.
if you were just interested in wanting to read about retirement, or you just wanted to know about how to choose a medical aid, or whatever it was, you could also just dip in and get that information. So that also how I worked it, because I find sometimes I get halfway through a financial book and I give up. So
No, especially nonfiction, I find, the message is in the first paragraph and the rest is commentary.
completely, that is so true. It's not true of my book. And I totally agree. I'm just thinking I could summarize this book into 10 pages and be done with it. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with the books. What's the first one we're going to talk about?
So The Psychology of Money. This is a book by Morgan Housel I wish I'd written. This is if this is the book I wish I'd written. It is the most unbelievably brilliant book. Simple, effective about money, money lessons and how our mind works around money. But just generally one of the best. Yeah, I mean, I think the comment here is one of the best and most original finance books in years, and I would agree with that. So I would definitely say that anybody who has even a vague interest in understanding their own behavior around money should read this book.
What are some of the lessons that stand out for you from the book?
I think for me, the lessons are really about it's actually a lot simpler than we make out. And I think the industry loves to make it complicated. But actually, it's simple. Like spend less than you say. I mean, spend less than you earn, and all those good lessons. But he also brings about things, and there's a great concept he brings in the book, which is the difference between being rich and being wealthy.
Okay.
And the idea of what you're showing and and the difference between those two. And I want to actually read an extract about that because I think for me it was probably the most poignant point that he makes.
Okay. Yes. Let's hear. Yeah.
So he writes, this is what Morgan Housel writes. He says, when most people say they want to be a millionaire, what they might actually mean is, I'd like to spend $1 million. And it is literally the opposite of being a millionaire. And then he goes on to say, rich is a current income. Someone driving a $100,000 car is most certainly rich because even if they purchase the car with debt, you need a certain level of income to afford the monthly payments. Same with those that live in big homes. It's not hard to spot rich people. They often go out of their way to make themselves known. But wealth is hidden. It's income not spent. Wealth is an option, not yet taken, to buy something later. Its value lies in offering you options, flexibility, and growth to one day purchase more stuff than you could do right now. And I think that is probably one of the greatest life lessons that anyone could learn.
It reminds me of that marshmallow experiment. I definitely would have been the child that ate both marshmallows because the first.
I wanted to tell you something about the marshmallow experiment that I only learned quite recently. So, for people who may not know what it is, these children were in a classroom and they were given a marshmallow. And the teacher left and they said, if I come back and the marshmallow is still there, you'll get 2 marshmallows. So, it was teaching delayed gratification. And they went on to track these children through the years and found that those who were able to resist the marshmallow were more successful in life. So in other words, delayed gratifications really helps you. But what I didn't know was if you go and look at the video footage of it, the children weren't just staring at the marshmallow very well behaved and saying, I can wait. They were hiding it. They were covering it with paper. They were doing, so they had worked out that they needed to put mechanisms in place to be disciplined. And I think that's an important lesson that I don't think we talk enough about that part of the lesson of it. Because it's not, you always say, well, somebody may just be more disciplined than another. But we actually can find mechanisms to be more disciplined. I'm going to give you a good example about me and biscuits. I love biscuits. And if there's a packet of biscuits at home, I will eat the entire packet. I have no off button, right?
I can't sleep knowing there are biscuits left in the cupboard.
Chocolate, I'm fine. Anything else? There's something about biscuits.
Okay.
So I can't have biscuits at home unless I'd be the size of a house myself. So I always, when I go out for coffee, I always go to a coffee shop that gives you a biscuit with the coffee. But it's those things. It's knowing yourself and then putting in the discipline. And I think that's what we can actually also take from that marshmallow experiment.
Okay, so you don't have to be naturally good at everything. There are, you can put measures in place to sort of safeguard you against your known weaknesses.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you're so passionate about financial education. Are there any other, lessons apart from, the obvious, budgeting and as you say, spend less than you earn? Any other lessons you wish people would take on board?
That one day the future comes. And I'm sitting here now, I'm in my 50s. So I can, and what the frustrating thing is you want to go to that 25-year-old and you're trying to get a 25-year-old to understand that one day they're going to want to have choices in their life. They don't, and that's going to mean choices, giving up some stuff or putting money away at 25. But when you're 25, you just think, woohoo, life is life. I've finally got a credit card. I'm going to use it, and that's one thing is trying to impart the future self, and I think that's the tough nut to crack in the financial industry. Is how do we get people to realize that one day they're going to wake up and wish they'd done things differently. So that's probably the one lesson. If only we could just get that through.
Gosh, I'm older than 25 and still haven't learned. I found that balance between wanting to enjoy life and the time you have and not, save everything versus, being wise about the future.
But I suppose it's having a plan. You can do both as long as you're planning for it. So, how much do I need to be putting away because I want to have this plan here, but then what's left of that and how do I use that effectively? And how much money we waste. We waste a lot of money on things that actually don't bring us joy. So when we go through, if you had to go and track your budget over a month, I promise you, there'll be things you'll think,
could have done about that.
Spending. And it's that kind of reflection that then you say, okay, well, that money that I perhaps kind of didn't need to spend. I'm going to put towards an overseas holiday that I really want to do. So I think it's a lot about just looking at our money and making it do more for us rather than looking at it as deprivation.
And I suppose knowing that, you have this budget and you can make choices within that choice, I think of it always in terms of calories. I have so many calories a day and I can spend them however I want, which is actually a freedom rather than a constraint. So I should think of my budget that way. What's the next book we're going to discuss?
So sorry, I am staying on the finance theme.
Oh yeah.
If I had to bring up my
When in Rome.
books, it would have been non-fictional. My literature, I would have been like this. So yeah, I'm sticking to the financial books. So this one is The Behaviour Gap by Carl Richards. And also just, simple ways to stop doing dumb things with money. Again, just really smart, clever ideas. And when he spoke about the behavior gap, he was really talking about this idea that we are our own worst enemies. And there's a lot of studies, in fact, Alan Gray's even done one on their own funds, that finds that people invest in their fund do worse than the fund does because they're always in and out. They're trying to time the market.
Yeah.
So the market falls and they decide now's the time to take their money out. And then the market's going up and when it's the top, they put their money in. So we are often our own worst enemies. And he talks about this as the behavior gap. And that's almost where the concept comes from. But I actually know Carl. So when he came to South Africa, to talk about his book, I got to interview him as a journalist and we really connected. And when next time he came to South Africa, we went out for lunch and he allowed me to use some of his amazing illustrations. He's very well known for his illustrations in my book. So that's also, it was really kind of him and gives you an idea of the kind of generous person that he is.
Can we see an example of an illustration?
Yes. So this is, so this is, is the behavior gap, exactly what we were speaking about: greed, buy, fear, sell, repeat until broke. And he does these on a serviette. And he started off, that is actually what he's very famous for. So I don't know if you can zoom in on this one, but your money, your life, and where it intersects is the real financial planning. It's that kind of simple ideas. And I think he's really been smart at doing that. Yeah.
What makes, a 5-star read for you? Because I'm sure you read a lot of finance books. And how do you choose? Yeah, how do you choose?
I think it's something where they've given me an idea that is new. Where I'm like, oh wow, okay, that really resonated. And I think with Carl's book, I mean, with Morgan Housel's book, there's just so much really clever things that he puts in there. Even with Morgan Housel, he talks about our affinity to different asset classes, depending on which era we were born in. If you were born in the wartime or if you were born in the 80s, if you were born, you will have a different perspective of gold, of bonds, of equities. So, that those are some of the kind of interesting insights that he gave me. And I think with Cole, we are really connected with Carl was when I left, and I'm going to talk about this, but I left stockbroking because I'd become quite frustrated with the immediacy and the kind of avarice that goes with trading shares and trying to double your money and all of that. And I kind of felt that was disconnected from what people's real finances were looking like. And he writes about that as well.
Okay. Picking up on your stockbroking history, how did you get from your degree or your honors degree in economics to, I guess, working in stockbroking and finance and then to journalism?
Yes, that was exactly this weird road. And what I'm going to talk about at the event is I went to university and I was originally going to study law. And I was given this great advice by a friend who was an attorney saying, use your time at university to expand your mind. Study outside of your degree. So I landed up English literature. Surprisingly, was one of my majors. I did philosophy, Italian, and then I came across the subject economics. So I landed up doing economics. But then I went and I actually got a job at Investec Private Banks. I went into the finance world. But whilst I was at university, I did an aptitude test. And they said number one was journalism. But for me at that point, the Star newspaper, I didn't know what journalism meant. But many years later, when I left stockbroking and I'd taken a little bit of a sabbatical, a newspaper was launched in South Africa, and I realized that that's actually what I wanted to do. I wanted to use my knowledge, my financial knowledge, and educate people through the media without having to sell a product. I think that was probably the big connection. Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of media and traditional media, I know you've spoken about the dangers of TikTok and other, I suppose, new forms of journalism, which maybe aren't as thorough or rigorous as
Yeah.
traditional. What are some of the dangerous messages you're seeing coming through?
I have a love-hate relationship with social media. On one level, it's an incredible platform to educate people. It really is, because people's attention spans now are less than a goldfish. So
Because of social
you
media.
go to social
Maybe.
media. So long form journalism, which I still really enjoy.
Yeah.
Give me, I love writing like a 1,000, 2,000 word piece where I can really get into and explain the nuances and all of this. And there's this, but then there's that. But just nobody wants to read them, right? So being able to now get through at least some important concepts in a short, kind of easy way, video now, obviously all these ways through social media. So that's an amazing platform for education. But of course, in comes all of the fakeness, and we're seeing a proliferation of this. And TikTok is, for me, probably the worst. In fact, my column in News 24 this last week was about the dangers of TikTok. And this is a great advice on TikTok that you get if you go onto TikTok is don't pay your debt, because when it gets sold, because the credit provider will sell it onto a debt collector, the debt collector doesn't have the right to bring judgment against you.
Oh, so it's not your problem
It's
anymore.
not a problem anymore. Totally incorrect, right? There's this woman I'm busy speaking to who informs me of this, and this is her strategy. And I'm like,
Oh gosh, make it someone else's problem.
let me assure you that this is incorrect. So yes,
Okay.
this is the problem, is that there's a lot of fake information out there, and actually, quite frankly, very dangerous. So I see both sides of it.
Are you on TikTok?
I'm not actually. I'm on every form of social media. But I do have a handle on TikTok. I've got my handle there. But I had such a negative experience on it of being cloned. I get cloned often. People pretend to be me, and I could not get TikTok to take it down. It's this black hole. There's nowhere, and I'm not saying Meta's any better, but Meta does respond. You kind of do have an engagement with them. It just you were sending message, you didn't know who to contact. There was no way. And this person who was impersonating me was messaging people, selling them crypto using my profile. And I couldn't stop this person because no one at TikTok would do anything about it. And I just thought, I'm not sure if this is a space I actually want to be in. So yeah, I'm still trying to decide about TikTok.
Do you have any other, I guess, observations or, lessons from being a celebrity or being a well-known personality in your field?
I never think of myself as a celebrity. And you mentioned that earlier. And I'm like, it is like, I don't even think about it at all. I think it's the one time that that it kind of struck me. And I also was so proud of this, was that I was doing, and this is probably why people are, I'm more familiar to people, is because of my Money Matters show on ENCA. So I think it was for 5 years that I was on every week. We had several episodes every week. And I remember walking through the airport, and I would be greeted by the baggage handler. I'd be greeted by the security guards. I would be greeted by the businessman in the lounge, the air hostess. And I realized that the content that I was producing was going across the board. And I think for me, I was so proud of myself for that moment, not for being a celebrity or being recognized, but for, I thought, wow, what I'm doing is matters to a wide range of people. And then my content's really doing something for people. And I think that was that moment. I remember so clearly thinking, I've gone through this airport and had all these different people at different income levels, all telling me that what I'm doing matters. And I think that was a moment, yeah.
And that's so unusual, because I feel like one of the first things they teach you in marketing any business or brand is, choose your target markets. And, it almost feels the more specific, the better. But if you can sort of supersede, or reach a whole range of people.
But the money is for everybody, you see. And I think that's, and also what I do find, and I've written for many publications, so I can tell you this, there are people who are high net worth individuals who know very little about money, and they don't want to admit it. So they can, when I was doing my NCA thing, they were like, they didn't have to admit to anyone that they were learning, but they were learning.
Well, it's kind of like the behavior gap, you can be very educated and know what's good for you and, be in a privileged position, but make worse choices than
Yeah.
someone who doesn't have those things. Do you have a favorite quote from that book?
Yes, because this is the one that, as I said, why I think Carl and I resonated. And this kind of actually sums up for me the whole behavior gap. Picking the next apple is not a financial goal. Saving for retirement or having enough money to send your kids to college are financial goals. I think that sums it up. Exactly how I felt when I was working in stockbroking and how I still feel. And I think it is, if I wrote an article about the next stock that's going to blow the lights out, it could have more reads than if I said, this is how you achieve your retirement plans. But sadly, that is where people focus.
Okay, so the apple in that analogy is, the shiny, tempting, short term, nice, yummy thing.
It's what people love to talk about around the braai.
Okay.
I'm going to invest in this, and I bought that, and I've done this, and all of that. But in the meantime, they don't talk about credit card debt. They don't talk about the fact they don't have a medical aid or a will. They don't want to talk about how they're going to fund their kids' education. They don't want to talk about estate planning because that's boring.
Life insurance.
You definitely want to talk about life insurance. No one's talking about life insurance.
Yeah, try being an actuary at a braai.
Exactly. I was going to say, my sister was involved in life insurance, and she said to me, she literally was the person you should walk to the braai and everyone just walked away.
Exactly.
Exactly.
What's the next book that you brought along?
My other book is, well, this is a non-financial book, but when you are trying to navigate the world, you need philosophy, right? We all need it. And The Daily Stoic. I discovered this at the beginning of 2024, so it's not as, So, and this is 366 meditations on wisdom, perseverance, and the art of living. And every day there's a little entry along with the date of the day, whichever day of the week it is, and you can read it, and it just gives you inspiration to be a better person. And I just found I really liked the Stoic philosophy. It kind of, I'm not a sort of Freud kind of let's go and see how can we blame our parents for where we are today. I'm a little bit more of a come on, get up and get on with it, girl.
So what is, the message of Stoicism? Yes.
I'll actually read you an entry because it's kind of, I think for me, it was actually the 13th of January's entry. And it's a circle of control. So according to the Stoics, the circle of control contains just one thing, your mind. Even your physical body isn't completely within that circle. You could be struck with a physical illness or impairment at any moment. You could be traveling in a foreign country and be thrown in jail. But this is good news because it drastically reduces the amount of things you need to think about. While everyone is running around with a list of responsibilities a mile long, things they're not actually responsible for, you've just got one item on your list. You've just got one thing to manage: your choices, your will, your mind. And I think that's Stoic philosophy.
Okay. Does that bring you peace?
It does. Absolutely. I can't say I'm very good at it. I'm not sitting here to but it does. It's given me a way through challenging situations, or, when we get our mind gets us a little bit carried away. It just helps me center and saying, this is all I am in control of. And if you can control your mind, then wow, you are actually, that you're really in control. Because I think so much unhappiness and disappointment and all of that is actually comes from the way we perceive things.
And I guess, not having the serenity to accept the things you can't change.
Exactly. It's very similar. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, what's the biggest financial risk you've taken that's actually paid off? Something that you wouldn't necessarily recommend other people to do, but somehow worked for you in the moment.
Biggest financial risk? Gosh, that's actually a very good question, and I haven't actually thought about it. I don't know if I've ever taken any financial risk I've taken has never really worked out that well. Actually,
That's a good answer.
yeah. So I was actually thinking about it. I mean, I remember there was this startup company, and I knew somebody who was advising it, and it sounded like such a brilliant idea. And I put some money into that, and I, I could have become a gazillionaire or lost all my money, but I lost all my money instead. So I can't think of anything that was like, wow, I really risked my money and it was worth it. No. Maybe I'm just really bad at choosing the right kind of risk.
Well, maybe it's one of those things we spoke about earlier, knowing your weaknesses and then, putting safeguards in place to protect you from yourself. Yeah, I'm the same. What do you think of buying lotto tickets as a financial strategy?
It's sort of shockingly that, well, as we know, that anyone who buys lotto tickets can't do maths, right? Um, so I think you need to look at lotto tickets not as a financial thing, but as fun. So my mom, I don't play the lotto, but my mom buys a lotto ticket, and every week, because it gives her something to look forward to.
Okay.
She believes that she could possibly win the lotto, and for the hour before the numbers are announced, she's all very excited. Then and she thinks about it. She's, Maya, I think, what am I going to do with this money, and how will I spend it? So for her, it's entertainment, and I think if you consider it entertainment, that's great. But I want to tell you a little bit of an analogy with a lotto ticket that I was having with a certain relative of mine, who hopefully won't listen to this podcast. And she was complaining that her husband spent money on the lotto, and he was just wasting money. And I said to her, well, I know your overdraft facility, and I know your interest you're paying on it. And I did the maths, and I said, you are paying far more on interest because you're sitting in overdraft and he's spending on lotto tickets. And at least he's got the opportunity of winning something. So there you are.
It's upside. Um, you mentioned at the beginning that you are quite interested at the moment in the retirement gap, and that's sort of front of mind for you. Can you tell us a bit more about that and some of the
Yeah, I
considerations?
suspect it's because of the age I'm at now. I'm in my 50s. So a lot of my friends are in that age group, or people that are in my sort of environment. And so many of them are high income earners. And they are facing the reality that they do not have enough money to retire. They will never have enough money to retire. Because if your lifestyle is such that you need 100,000 Rand a month to live on, you need 30 million Rand at retirement.
Oh,
So people haven't done the maths.
yeah.
And they remember, if you're spending 100,000 every month, you're probably not investing, because you're paying off cars and houses and sending your kids to private schools. And that's why you've reached such a big number. And that's why you need so much money. And you haven't matched your investments with it. And there's this massive shock that people are coming up against. So yes, they could massively reduce their lifestyle in retirement, but they don't want to. I mean, who wants to give up so if you're doing the annual overseas holiday, you now have time for it. You're like, the whole point of retirement is to be able to go overseas, is to be able to go on holiday. So people are really facing this. And we talk a lot about low-income earners, and a lot of the space that I work in is in that. But we also don't pay attention to high-income earners and the reality of what is actually happening in that space. And the expense of having a certain lifestyle, private schooling, medical aids, all of these things, and how that's actually eaten into people's disposable income and where we're sitting at. So I'm quite interested in that space. And also, many people are basically going to have to work past perhaps a traditional retirement age of 65. And what does that look like for them? And also the fact that most companies have a retirement age of 60, most of the banks. And I was speaking to a woman recently who's devastated because she has to retire at 60. She works for a bank, and she had her children late in life. So her children are still at university.
Oh,
So she's got university fees. And so she's used her skills, and she's gone to event management. But you have to basically reinvent yourself at the age of 60. And I think that's, for me, quite an interesting space. Yeah.
And I suppose those retirement ages were set when people weren't living that long, didn't have maybe had 10 years of retirement, but now, we have this 100-year life that we need to think about.
Exactly. The longevity is the other problem. Yeah.
Um, Out of interest, do you have, what's your most interesting or fun or mind-blowing case that you've dealt with in terms of insurance, specifically life insurance? And I'm asking this on behalf of actuaries listening.
I maybe so much life insurance. It's do they have credit insurance would
Yeah.
be part of that. So credit insurance is probably I have waged a war against credit insurance for 15 years. I was writing about the abuse of credit insurance before it was even regulated, because I was just seeing micro lenders abusing it, charging people 57 Rand per thousand rand of debt premiums. And so that's a space I've been watching for a long time. And then COVID happened, and people were retrenched, or they basically were told that their jobs were on hold. They weren't going to earn a salary for we don't know how long. And the banks all came out and said, "Don't worry, we're so wonderful. We're going to give you payment holidays." And what does a payment holiday mean? They weren't saying we're going to hold your interest. No, 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 no. The interest will still be accruing, which means that 1 month payment holiday will land up being 4 or 5 months. And I was actually interviewing a CEO of a bank, and I said to him, "But what about credit insurance? Most of your credit card holders, personal loan people have credit insurance." And he was like, "Well, what are you talking about?" And I realized the banks hadn't thought about it. And they were not telling their clients about it. And I went huge, and I did a video, it went viral, and it actually brought this whole thing to the fore, to the extent that I know FNB alone paid out 300 million rand in credit life installments.
Oh my word.
And that is an example of the power of media and journalism. So yeah, I think credit insurance is an area that I am very concerned about. I think it is one of those ways of credit providers making money and not telling people that they actually have it.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I think actuaries, that's yeah.
Well, as actuaries, we are known to sit in ivory towers and be, quite removed from the policyholder and their experience and what's good for them. It's easy. Well, it may be seen as easy for us to just, work on our models and do the pricing and then hand things over. So it's really interesting to hear about people on the ground and their experiences. Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm grappling with at the moment is underwriting. Because we're almost getting too good at underwriting. And by doing that, insurance is losing its principle, which is pooled risk.
Yes.
So we're starting to see, well, if we can know exactly your health attributes, everything about you, your DNA, you can do, genome testing, we can do all of this. We can identify exactly your risks, but then you're removing the pooled risk, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing the same thing with short-term insurance around potential flood areas, all of these things, climate change, what areas will be affected. So we're going to put those premiums up. So at what point are we're moving away from the actual concept of pooling risk?
Insurance, yeah.
Of insurance. So I'm getting more and more concerned about that. If you go and try and take our car insurance, they can now say the color of your car. Have you just been divorced?
Oh,
If you get
really?
divorced, then your premiums go up.
Oh,
All of
gosh.
those things. So it's an interesting one for me, and I think that's an interesting space for actuaries.
Yeah. Because it's very fun and interesting to think about what new innovative risk factor or risk rating factors we can include, like epigenetics or gut health or whatever else, where you can analyze someone down to their DNA. But yeah, as you say, then that's
Sometimes you're born with that, and now you're going to not
punished
be
for that.
you're going to be punished for it
Yeah.
because we can now identify it.
But similarly, in South Africa, we do discriminate, or discriminate, I guess is the word, between male and female, which you're also born with. And why is that okay?
It's such an interesting one, male and female, because it actually works on both ways. So when you are insuring for life cover, women will pay lower premiums, right? But when it comes to buying an annuity at retirement, they pay a higher premium effectively because they've got the longevity risk. So it affects it on both. It's a different what the swings and roundabouts.
But that's I don't know if I'm sure you're familiar with the European Union years ago. Yeah,
So you
they
can't.
yeah.
And I think that's interesting because how would you factor for that? Because if you're looking at longevity, so would you use the male or female longevity?
Good question.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Did you come up with new tables, just not looking at just looking at everyone?
and what's so interesting. So obviously, if you're buying a guaranteed annuity as a woman, you're going to get a lower, monthly income. But also, if you go and take out a living annuity, right, which is investment based, women have to draw less than men. Now that risk isn't underwritten. So if you draw down too much as a woman, you will run out of money. So that is a bias that is there and exists that has gone into with insurance. It's women have to have more for retirement than men do. Whether even if you're going for a living annuity, you have to draw down less because you're going to live longer.
Yeah.
So these are some of the we can, this is what we're grappling with when it comes to retirement issues.
You've touched on I'm quite interested in, and it's explored a lot in a book called Invisible Woman, where
Loved it. Yeah.
yeah, do
See,
you see that a lot? Where things are just assumed, the
and
male is
all
default.
the rules of thumb are male based. So how much you should save for retirement is male based. The 4% drawdown rate is male based because they're all based on male longevities. So there is so much, and I mean, in Invisible Woman, I remember this one so well. The temperature of the office.
Oh my word.
Male metabolic rate.
Yeah.
So that's why women walk around freezing cold all the time.
Yeah.
The showers are the default for a shower is cooler because men have cooler showers than women. So I thought that book was just
It was very good. Yeah, one of the few nonfiction books I've really enjoyed. Yeah, but also for me, it's also a balance of how much do I think about these things and let myself get upset versus just getting on with it. Like I guess maybe there's a bit of stoicism as well.
Yes, I mean, I think we can. It is about saying, what can I do about it?
Yeah.
And and maybe when you are in an industry where you can say, well, guys, are there things we're missing here? So certainly this is a big discussion in AI around bias. And especially there is the amount of pronouns that are fed to male pronouns are much higher than female pronouns when it comes to financial information that's fed into AI. So you need to be aware of these so that you can correct them. You don't have to get upset about it.
Yeah.
But you need to be aware of them to correct them. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think it's not so much about being upset about it, but making a change where you can.
It's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. I know you said you didn't bring any, fiction or literature kind of books with you today, but if you had to recommend one, or what's one that you like to give as a gift, or that comes to mind when you think of a fiction book that's really made an impression on you?
Oh gosh, there's so many. That's hard to kind of narrow down one. That was my problem. I don't like to because there's so many books that I've read that have stayed with me. But I mean, one of the books, and again, unfortunately, this isn't fiction, but it's like a work of fiction, is Kings of Shanghai. Oh, I do have one I'm going to talk about. But the Kings of Shanghai, I think Jonathan Kaufman wrote it, and it's about the Sassoon and what's the other family? The Curry family, and they're built their massively wealthy families and how they built their wealth in China.
Okay.
And just absolutely fascinating reading. That's one I read recently. But A Gentleman in Moscow.
Oh, okay.
Beautiful, beautiful book.
Amos Towers or something.
Amos Towers, yeah. And he, and that was because I think one of the questions I know you were going to ask me is do you think books can translate into movies? And I don't know if you saw, but that's been a series.
Yes, I saw. I haven't watched it. I haven't read the book either.
Yeah, and they have done an incredibly good job of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So if I had to send you to a desert island with The Psychology of Money, The Behaviour Gap, The Daily Stoic, and A Gentleman in Moscow, and you could only choose one of these books to take with you, which one would it be?
Can I add another one? And this is
yes,
pretty pretentious, but I'm not trying to be pretentious. It would probably be Dickens.
Okay.
So maybe something like Tale of Two Cities. I love to read, if I'm now stuck on an island, I love to read Dickens because the ability to write and the sentence construction is just sublime. And to be able to sit and actually read it at leisure and go back and look at it again and just look at the incredible artistry, that would probably be the one I would actually take.
Okay, so that would keep you busy, and that would be something outside of your mind that you would have a bit of control over. Thank you so much, Maya. If people do want to reach out to you or follow you or listen to your shows, your podcasts, where's the best place?
So if you just type in My On Money, you will find me everywhere. So my handle on all social media is @MyOnMoney. My website's My On Money. My podcast is a little bit different. It's My Money, My Lifestyle, because that was actually the column I was writing for City Press, and we named it that. But yeah, you just have to type in My On Money, and you'll find me everywhere.
Okay, and what are you currently reading?
I'm going to sound so boring. but I'm reading The History of Money by David McWilliams,
Okay.
an economist. But I have just finished reading The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak, which I really enjoyed. And we were saying earlier what you learn through books, and this was about the Cyprus Civil War, which I knew nothing about, and I learned about. And the book that I'm just about to start with intrepidation, John Boyne. I don't know if you know him. He's one of my favorite
Hearts and Invisible Furies.
And he was at the Frontalk Festival this year.
Gosh, I missed that. Okay.
And Elements. So
Okay.
all four of
Here's a quartet.
a quartet. So
Okay.
I'm about to embark upon those, which are going to be gut wrenching, but I imagine incredibly good. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it's on. Yeah, it's on.
So yeah. So I would definitely put most of John Boyne's books on that list of
Okay.
books. I mean, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. I would hand that to
I
anyone.
never read that one.
Yes.
Unrest.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, there's a lot of his books that I'd probably hand out to people.
Okay, well, I have another book to add to your TBR as a thank you for being on the show. To thank you, I've got this book called Clear Thinking by Shane Parrish. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh wow, no, I don't. Oh, that's so interesting because Ryan Holiday.
Oh, there you go.
Yes,
So
yes.
you know, being not a big nonfiction reader, I had to, kind of crowdsource recommendations, and my boss Barry recommended this one. And I thought, because you're sort of interested in ideas and how to apply them in clear thinking and behavioral sort of economics, you might enjoy that one.
Oh, this is fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant.
Okay, thank you. Any last thoughts or messages for our audience?
Yeah, I think reading's important. It opens doors on so many levels. And I have I've got two sons, and one is an avid reader and the other really struggles to read. And I feel so sorry for him because I think reading is just opens up worlds for you. You can sit it at home and you can be in 100 different places far away from where you are, but it can also be a place of inspiration, place of ideas. So yes, I think, oh, thank goodness for authors and writers.
Thank goodness. And it's a cost-effective hobby as well.
Very cost effective. I mean, cheaper than traveling.
Thank you so much, Maya. It's been such a privilege.
Wonderful to be here. It's such a lovely conversation.
Thank you.